Welcome to Englishor, Learn by Listening, your daily dose of English listening and learning practice. The audio in this video is from LibriVox, a public domain source. This content is used strictly for educational purposes to improve your English listening skills. It's also perfect if you're preparing for IELTS, TOEFL, or any language proficiency test. Don't just learn English, hear it, feel it, live it. This is part 1 of a multi-part English listening story. Make sure to follow the full series for complete learning. Let's begin today's practice.
A Hunger Artist by Franz Kafka. Translated by Ian Johnston. Recording by Corey Samuel. In the last decades, interest in hunger artists has declined considerably. Whereas in earlier days there was good money to be earned putting on major productions of this sort under one's own management, nowadays that is totally impossible. Those were different times. Back then the hunger artist captured the attention of the entire city. From day to day, while the fasting lasted, participation increased. Everyone wanted to see the hunger artist at least daily. During the final days, there were people with subscription tickets who sat all day in front of the small barred cage. And there were even viewing hours at night, their impact heightened by torchlight. On fine days, the cage was dragged out into the open air, and then the hunger artist was put on display particularly for the children. While for grown-ups, the hunger artist was often merely a joke, something they participated in because it was fashionable. The children looked on amazed, their mouths open, holding each other's hands for safety, as he sat there on scattered straw, spurning a chair, in black tights, looking pale, with his ribs sticking out prominently, sometimes nodding politely, answering questions with a forced smile, even sticking his arm out through the bars to let people feel how emaciated he was. But then, completely sinking back into himself, so that he paid no attention to anything, not even to what was so important to him, the striking of the clock, which was the single furnishing in the cage. Merely looking out in front of him, with his eyes almost shut, and now and then sipping from a tiny glass of water to moisten his lips. Apart from the changing groups of spectators, there were also constant observers chosen by the public. Strangely enough, they were usually butchers, who, always 3 at a time, were given the task of observing the hunger artist day and night, so that he didn't get something to eat in some secret manner. It was, however, merely a formality, introduced to reassure the masses, for those who understood knew well enough that during the period of fasting the hunger artist would never, under any circumstances, have eaten the slightest thing, not even if compelled by force. The honour of his art forbade it. Naturally, none of the watchers understood that. Sometimes there were nightly groups of watchers who carried out their vigil very laxly, deliberately sitting together in a distant corner and putting all their attention into playing cards there, clearly intending to allow the hunger artist a small refreshment, which, according to their way of thinking, he could get from some secret supplies. Nothing was more excruciating to the hunger artist than such watchers. They depressed him. They made his fasting terribly difficult. Sometimes he overcame his weakness and sang during the time they were observing, for as long as he could keep it up, to show people how unjust their suspicions about him were. But that was little help, for then they just wondered among themselves about his skill at being able to eat even while singing. He much preferred the observers who sat down right against the bars, and, not satisfied with the dim backlighting of the room, illuminated him with electric flashlights. The glaring light didn't bother him in the slightest. Generally he couldn't sleep at all, and he could always doze under any lighting and at any hour, even in an overcrowded, noisy auditorium. With such observers, he was very happily prepared to spend the entire night without sleeping. He was very pleased to joke with them, to recount stories from his nomadic life, and then, in turn, to listen to their stories, doing everything just to keep them awake, so that he could keep showing them once again that he had nothing to eat in his cage, and that he was fasting as none of them could. He was happiest, however, when morning came, and a lavish breakfast was brought for them at his own expense, on which they hurled themselves with the appetite of healthy men after a hard night's work without sleep. True, there were still people who wanted to see in this breakfast an unfair means of influencing the observers, but that was going too far, and if they were asked whether they wanted to undertake the observers' night shift for its own sake, without the breakfast, they excused themselves. But none the less they stood by their suspicions. However, it was, in general, part of fasting that these doubts were inextricably associated with it. For in fact, no one was in a position to spend time watching the hunger artist every day and night, so no one could know, on the basis of his own observation, whether this was a case of truly uninterrupted, flawless fasting. The hunger artist himself was the only one who could know that, and, at the same time, the only spectator capable of being completely satisfied with his own fasting. But the reason he was never satisfied was something different. Perhaps it was not fasting at all which made him so very emaciated that many people, to their own regret, had to stay away from his performance because they couldn't bear to look at him. For he was also so skeletal, out of dissatisfaction with himself, because he alone knew something that even initiates didn't know: how easy it was to fast. It was the easiest thing in the world. About this he did not remain silent, but people did not believe him. At best they thought he was being modest. Most of them, however, believed he was a publicity seeker or a total swindler, for whom, at all events, fasting was easy because he understood how to make it easy, and then had the nerve to half admit it. He had to accept all that. Over the years he had become accustomed to it. But this dissatisfaction kept gnawing at his insides all the time, and never yet, and this one had to say to his credit, had he left the cage of his own free will after any period of fasting. The impresario had set the maximum length of time for the fast at 40 days. He would never allow the fasting to go on beyond that point, not even in the cosmopolitan cities. And in fact, he had a good reason. Experience had shown that for about 40 days one could increasingly whip up a city's interest by gradually increasing advertising, but that then the people turned away. One could demonstrate a significant decline in popularity. In this respect there were, of course, small differences among towns and among different countries, but as a rule it was true that 40 days was the maximum length of time. So then, on the 40th day, the door of the cage, which was covered with flowers, was opened. An enthusiastic audience filled the amphitheatre. A military band played. 2 doctors entered the cage in order to take the necessary measurements of the hunger artist. The results were announced to the auditorium through a megaphone, and finally 2 young ladies arrived, happy about the fact that they were the ones who had just been selected by lot, seeking to lead the hunger artist down a couple of steps out of the cage, where on a small table a carefully chosen hospital meal was laid out. And at this moment the hunger artist always fought back. Of course, he still freely laid his bony arms in the helpful outstretched hands of the ladies bending over him, but he did not want to stand up. Why stop right now after 40 days? He could have kept going for even longer, for an unlimited length of time. Why stop right now, when he was in his best form, indeed, not yet even in his best fasting form. Why did people want to rob him of the fame of fasting longer, not just so that he could become the greatest hunger artist of all time, which he probably was already, but also so that he could surpass himself in some unimaginable way, for he felt there were no limits to his capacity for fasting? Why did this crowd, which pretended to admire him so much, have so little patience with him?
Thank you for listening with Englishor. Learn by listening. All audio used is from LibriVox and is in the public domain. This practice session helps improve your listening comprehension, useful for IELTS, TOEFL, and other language exams. Don't just learn English, hear it, feel it, live it. Keep learning, keep growing, and commit to yourself. Until I master English, I will give my 100% every single day. If this video is part of a story series, make sure to check out other part 2, part 3, and more in the playlist. Like, subscribe, and share if you found this helpful. Comment your favorite word or moment from today's practice. See you in the next one, learner.